What is going on, everybody? This is your man, Rodney Knight, aka RJ Knight, the sports guy. Wanted to bring you guys with another video today. So it's been a very interesting week we had coming up last week. So we had just gone into the NFL free agency period where teams can go ahead and sign and trade people all around the season. And lo and behold, it has been a very interesting week nonetheless. And I'm going to break down the biggest trades and free agent signings on the offensive and defensive side, and who I think was the biggest winner and the biggest loser when it comes to NFL free agency. So, first off, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go over the biggest free agent signings that we had. So, to start off with, former quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins, 35 years old, who is coming off a Achilles injury last year, which made him miss majority of the season last year, has signed with the Atlanta Falcons for 4 years, 180 million, with 100 million guaranteed. So if you look at the different quarterbacks who were a free agent this season, he was probably the best fit for that team. And I'm going to go into later of a quarterback that was eventually traded to another team. He was probably, my opinion, their best option to that team. But since he did ended up getting traded after they signed Kirk Cousins was probably the best fit and probably the best available quarterback that the Atlanta Falcons could have got. Now, I don't agree with the contract numbers. 180 million for a quarterback that's about to turn 35 this year. He's going to turn 36, when the season starts. So obviously, the 180 million with 100 million guaranteed, that is a bit much because we don't know for sure if Kirk Cousins is going to stay the full 4 seasons because injuries can happen. Even though the Falcons have the talent surrounding Kirk Cousins, we don't know for sure if he's going to be able to last the 4 seasons with Atlanta. But I must say, it is a solid pickup for the Falcons. They got a quarterback that could potentially lead them to the playoffs and maybe win the division in the NFC South. Because you look at the other teams in the NFC South, they're not really that much stronger. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who did win the division last season. Then you also got the Carolina Panthers, who are still rebuilding. And then you also got the New Orleans Saints, who are a solid team, almost won the division last year, but you don't really have that much competition in that division. So this could be the years that the Falcons, quote unquote, wise up and eventually make the playoffs. But we just have to wait and see. And hopefully Kirk Cousins can stay healthy this entire season and see what he can do with the weapons that Atlanta Falcons have. Because you got Kyle Pitts, you got Cordell Patterson, and you also got Bijan Robinson, and also somebody else who they ended up picking up in the offseason, former Chicago Bears wide receiver Darnell Mooney signed with the Atlanta Falcons for 3 years, 39 million. So you also got another receiver that you could put in, pair up with those weapons. So we have to wait and see if the Falcons have enough weapons on the offensive side to at least make a jump and head into the playoffs. So if we go into the offseason, in my opinion, the biggest trade that was made in the offseason was quarterback of the Chicago Bears, Justin Fields, who I did ended up talking about in a previous video. He ended up getting traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 6th-round pick. So looking back, it really boggles my mind that Justin Fields was traded to the Steelers for only a 6th-round pick. I mean, you have a guy who's only been in the league for 3 years. Yes, I was very critical on his game with the Chicago Bears, but I thought that with the right team and the right fit, Justin Fields will be able to show the talent that he has shown. And I just thought that ever since the Pittsburgh Steelers signed Russell Wilson, former quarterback of the Denver Broncos, I didn't think that the Steelers would look at Justin Fields. But now that the Steelers have ended up traded for Justin Fields and then traded their former quarterback, Kenny Pickett, to the Philadelphia Eagles, now you have a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers who could rebuild Justin Fields' confidence. Because you think about it with Russell Wilson, the Denver Broncos, they ended up cutting him, but the problem is they have dead money that they're going to have to pay Russell Wilson this season. They have to pay $38 million to Russell Wilson this year. And the Pittsburgh Steelers really just got him for cheap. Because ever after the Denver Broncos cut him this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers signed him and they only have to pay him a little over $1 million a year. So they really got Russell Wilson for cheap. So the Pittsburgh Steelers' idea is let Justin Fields back up Russell Wilson for about a year or two, learn behind, somebody who is potentially going to be in the Hall of Fame, Russell Wilson, see how it goes. And if Russell Wilson can't handle the starting position of the Pittsburgh Steelers, then you could go ahead and put in Justin Fields at the position. And I think with the Pittsburgh Steelers, that was one of the teams that I thought that would be the best fit for Justin Fields and his talent, because he's a dual threat type of quarterback. And I think with the right team and the right weapons, he's going to be able to flourish and stride. So I think with the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the lessons that he's going to get with Russell Wilson, who is also a dual threat quarterback, I think we're going to see the full potential of Justin Fields when he finally gets his chance. So that, I believe, was the biggest trade that was made in the offseason. So if you go over other free agent signings, defensive player Chris Jones, going off of his third Super Bowl win with the Kansas City Chiefs, has been locked up to the Kansas City Chiefs again. 5 years, over $100 million. So you could pretty much say that he is going to stay with the Kansas City Chiefs for the rest of his career, because the Kansas City Chiefs are looking to become the first team in NFL history to three-peat in the Super Bowl. Like I talked about in a previous video, no team in NFL history has even come close to three-peating. And if you look at the Kansas City Chiefs on the moves that they're trying to make, keeping Chris Jones, and you still have the best quarterback in the league with Patrick Mahomes and the best tight end in the league with Travis Kelce, there is no way that you can't think that this team is not good enough to three-peat. And if the Kansas City Chiefs three-peat this year, in my opinion, I think you could put Patrick Mahomes as the GOAT of NFL quarterbacks, even above guys like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, who people have put on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. So locking Chris Jones for another 5 years definitely gives them a chance to have a chance to three-peat this year. So if we look at one of the biggest signings on the defensive side, former defensive tackle of the Miami Dolphins, Christian Wilkins, signed with the Las Vegas Raiders for 4 years, $84.75 million. Guaranteed $110 million. So that's going to be a big contract, definitely. But the reason why the Raiders signed him is because they need to have someone on that defensive side to help out Maxx Crosby, because they want to try to get as good of a defense as they can. So with that signing, I think that's going to be really good for the Raiders defense, free up, some of the responsibility of the defensive side off of Maxx Crosby. And you got somebody who can help carry that defense, who can stop the run and put some pressure on the passing side. So that, I think, is the biggest defensive signing of Christian Wilkins heading to the Las Vegas Raiders. So if we go back to the offensive side, this season, as far as running backs, has been pretty crazy. Multiple running backs signing to different teams. Let's go ahead and break down the different running backs who signed with different teams. You have Saquon Barkley, former running back of the New York Giants. He signed to the division rival Philadelphia Eagles for 3 years, $37.75 million. And if you go to the recent news from other Giants fans, especially former running back of the New York Giants, Tiki Barber, for people that know who he is, he said that he has no love loss for Saquon Barkley. It just feels like that, everyone thinks that Saquon Barkley betrayed the New York Giants, which is totally not true, because if you go back last year, they put Saquon Barkley on the franchise tag because they didn't think that he was even good enough. So he was signed to the franchise tag last year, and that kind of created a rift between Saquon Barkley and the New York Giants that the Giants probably didn't believe in Saquon Barkley. So I totally understand and respect the decision that Saquon Barkley made. If you're with a team and they don't trust you to sign you to a long-term deal, why would you stay with that team? You can't be loyal to a team that doesn't be loyal to you back. So I understand the decision that Saquon Barkley made signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, and we're going to see how he does against his former team, the New York Giants, now that he has to play them 2 times a year. So another running back signing this year, Derrick Henry, who is, in my opinion, one of the best running backs of all time from the Tennessee Titans. He signed to the Baltimore Ravens for 2 years, $16 million. That equates to $8 million a year for 2 years. And in my opinion, that is a very solid signing because if you go to the Baltimore Ravens, you look at Derrick Henry if he can stay healthy, and then in my opinion, the best mobile quarterback in the NFL with Lamar Jackson, you got probably the best rushing team in the league right now. Because if you go back to 2019 when Lamar Jackson won his first MVP, he had a backfield of Mark Ingram, and they were the best running team in the entire league that year. Even though they did not win the Super Bowl that year, that was a very exciting team that year. So if you got Derrick Henry, who's the last breed of running backs who you could carry a team round of, if he could stay healthy and also the elevation of Lamar Jackson coming off his second MVP, I think the Baltimore Ravens, if they could surround, Lamar Jackson with some more weapons and keep grinding on the defensive side, I think the Baltimore Ravens is going to be the closest team that could compete with the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't see any other team in the AFC that could compete with the Kansas City Chiefs to try to prevent them from winning the Super Bowl. The only team that I see that is capable to at least compete with them and maybe beat them in the playoffs is the Baltimore Ravens, who did go to the AFC Championship this year and did end up losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. So right now, I think the Baltimore Ravens is the best team that could actually go up against the Kansas City Chiefs and have a chance to win. So another key free agent signing when it comes to the running backs is former Pro Bowl, All Pro running back from the Las Vegas Raiders, Josh Jacobs, signed with the Green Bay Packers. So, in my opinion, that was a very solid pickup for the Green Bay Packers. 4 years, $48 million. And before I go ahead, I thought with the Green Bay Packers, they would have had a 1-2 punch duo with Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs. Because you have Josh Jacobs, who was a former 1,000-yard rusher, Pro Bowler, and All Pro. And then you got Aaron Jones, who has made the Pro Bowl previous seasons before. I thought that was going to be a 1-2 punch. But since they ended up signing Josh Jacobs, they ended up cutting Aaron Jones and ended up ruining that 1-2 duo in the running back position that you could have had. So thanks to that release, Aaron Jones has signed with the division rival. Another situation like that, Aaron Jones has signed with the Minnesota Vikings. So obviously, Aaron Jones is probably going to be out for revenge. His former team that he's been with for over 4 or 5 years, he's cut them and brought in somebody else to take his job and replace him. Obviously, he's going to be upset about that. And sure enough, he has every reason to be upset. He's now going to have a chance to make the Packers pay by playing them twice this upcoming season. So if you look at other running back free agent signings in this season, you have former Dallas Cowboys running back Tony Pollard, who did sign to the Tennessee Titans for 3 years, $24 million. And it was not a good look for the Dallas Cowboys, my favorite team. Obviously, you lost your starting running back in the Tony Pollard, and then you ended up losing one of the heart and soul of the offensive line, Tyron Smith, who did sign to the New York Jets. You lost some key pieces in your offensive side, but you could have had a chance to re-sign them, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. But Tony Pollard, he has now signed with the Tennessee Titans. And then another free agent signing, running back addition, is DeAndre Swift. He has signed with the Chicago Bears for 3 years, $24 million. So that, I think, is another solid pickup for the Chicago Bears, who did also make a trade to get Keenan Allen from the Los Angeles Chargers. So if you look at the Chicago Bears, they traded for Keenan Allen, and then they signed DeAndre Swift. You got a really, really solid offensive position. You got DJ Moore, you got Keenan Allen, and then you have DeAndre Swift, who is a good, solid offensive trio. And then also you got the upcoming draft coming up. And you got the number 1 pick and the number 9 pick. So Chicago definitely is going to have decisions going into this draft. But we all know with the number 1 pick, the Chicago Bears are definitely going to draft Caleb Williams. Definitely after trading Justin Fields to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's pretty obvious now that the Chicago Bears are dead set on drafting Caleb Williams coming out of USC to be the future of the Chicago Bears. And I think with the Chicago Bears, since they have also the number 9 pick, I think to further enhance the Chicago Bears offense, I think they should try to trade up to get in the top 5 to try and snag Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver from Ohio State. I think if they're able to make that move, you're going to provide Caleb Williams with the best amount of weapons that you can get for him. To have a trio with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think is going to be arguably the best running back from this class. I mean, when you have a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Sr., you're definitely going to have that athleticism and that play brought down on you. So I definitely think with Marvin Harrison Jr., if the Chicago Bears can make a trade for Marvin Harrison Jr., I think the Chicago Bears, they may end up as one of those underdog teams going into this season. So I think, with the Chicago Bears, they definitely going to have a lot to do in this upcoming draft. Now that Justin Fields is no longer with the team, and you pretty much made up your mind that, you're just going to start over and you're going to draft Caleb Williams, number 1 overall in this draft at next month. And then the last key free agent signing that I want to talk about going into the defense, back to the defensive side, 4-time Pro Bowler and former All-Pro defensive end Danielle Hunter has signed with the Houston Texans for 2 years, $49 million. So he held out last year and then was placed on the franchise tag last year with the Minnesota Vikings to try to get a longer deal with the team. And for what he did last year, he ended up with a career high 16 and a half sacks last year, which is the most he ever had in a single season. So now after this year, he's a free agent. He thought he was going to get a better deal with the Minnesota Vikings, but that ended up not happening. So you go into a team like the Houston Texans, who did prove a lot of people wrong last year, making the playoffs, especially winning the division with a rookie quarterback as CJ Stroud, and winning a playoff game against the Cleveland Browns last year, who they put a whooping on last year. If you bring somebody else to free up the defensive side, that is definitely going to be a good look for the Houston Texans going into this season. And especially if you have somebody like, CJ Stroud, if he's going to improve year after year after year and not have that sophomore slump last year, he is definitely going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. So the final free agent signing that I want to mention from the offensive side, former Jacksonville Jaguars and Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley has also signed to the Tennessee Titans for 4 years, $92 million. So for a receiver who did miss a few games a couple seasons ago due to gambling, this is especially a lot of money for a guy who really didn't do that much last year. That is definitely a lot of money, especially for a receiver who didn't, do much last year, and he didn't make a Pro Bowl last year, and also coming off of a year where he was suspended for a lot of games due to gambling. So that's a big contract, for a receiver, for the Tennessee Titans. But they want to bring in some weapons to try to help out Will Levis, who they did draft in the last season. Since Ryan Tannehill is not with the team anymore, Will Levis is definitely looking like he's going to be the starting quarterback going into the season with the Tennessee Titans. So they want to surround him with the best weapons that they can. So, to my opinion, those are the biggest free agent signings from this free agency period, offensively and defensively. So then we're going to talk about who was the biggest winner and who was the biggest loser when it comes to the NFL free agency. So I think the biggest winners is definitely the Pittsburgh Steelers, because the two quarterbacks that you brought in, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, you have a quarterback, in Russell Wilson who you're paying dirt cheap, only a couple million, 1 million and whatnot. He could start this season and maybe the next season. Then you have Justin Fields, who can sit behind him, learn behind Russell Wilson. And when Russell Wilson ends up retiring and whatnot, you could bring Justin Fields in, and he's definitely going to be the starting quarterback for the future. So I think going into the offseason, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers were definitely the best team when it comes to free agency, and I think they were the best winners, because if you look at what they did with the quarterback position, signing Russell Wilson and trading for Justin Fields when you had Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, that's definitely a big upgrade for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they do have a lot of cap space available where they can go ahead and make some signings in the offseason still, try to bring in some more weapons for Russell Wilson and eventually, Justin Fields. So I think the biggest winners to the free agency was definitely the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now we go to the losers. And in my opinion, I hate to say it, and it sucks to say it, but I think the biggest losers when it comes to the free agency was my Dallas Cowboys. So just like I said, they didn't really do much when it comes to free agency this year, and they lost Tony Pollard, and they had the chance to sign 5 different running backs who were free agents. You had a chance to sign Saquon Barkley. You had a chance to get Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift. And you had a chance to re-sign Tony Pollard and to not end up signing any of those guys. And then we don't know for sure who's going to be, the starting running back going into the next season. And then you also have these other problems going into the Dallas Cowboys. You have Dak Prescott, who's in the final year of his contract, and we don't know for sure if Jerry Jones is going to re-sign Dak Prescott, especially after what happened in the playoffs against the Green Bay Packers where they got smoked. So I think my Cowboys was definitely the biggest losers when it comes to the NFL free agency, because to not end up with a starting running back and you only have 2 running backs that you have signed for this season, it really doesn't make no sense that you had a chance to sign Derrick Henry and all these other running backs, and you still don't have a running back who's going to be the clear-cut starter. So I definitely think that the Dallas Cowboys was the biggest loser when it comes to the NFL free agency. So we now have the NFL draft coming up next month, and definitely there's going to be some big changes going into the NFL, going into the draft next month. Some big changes, some big moves that's going to be made. Obviously, you have Caleb Williams, who is probably going to go number 1. And then you have the other 2 teams like the Washington Commanders and then the New England Patriots at number 2 and number 3. You have other quarterbacks available in that draft, and Heisman Trophy winner Jalen Daniels. And then you also have Drake May. So definitely some decisions that's going to be made on which quarterbacks are going to get drafted with the top 3 picks in the NFL draft next month. And then you also have some trades and other signings that is to be made. There's still some free agents that are still available that haven't been signed yet. So definitely there's going to be some news popping up off of NFL, ESPN, and other news coming up. So we're definitely going to keep control of that and keep it locked on who's going to get signed next. And also for my wrestling fans, you have WrestleMania coming up next month. So obviously in my next coming videos, I'm going to talk about building up WrestleMania, talking about, the event and what do I think is going to happen when it takes place in Philadelphia. Then also you got the NFL with the NFL draft next month. So we're definitely going to keep control of what's going to happen and the other free agent signings. And then lastly, you have the NBA season. Things are starting to heat up, going closer and closer to the NBA playoffs. Teams fighting for positions in the playoffs. Who's going to be the best team in the league? Obviously, the Boston Celtics are the best team in the league right now, number one in the East, number one overall in the entire league. So we definitely got some other news coming up on this channel, coming up in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks. So we're definitely going to keep control of that and keep it locked here. This is your man, RJ Knight, the sports guy, with another video signing off. Talk to y'all guys later. Peace.